Hi, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show, the show for animal training and behaviour nerds, where I, Ryan Cartledge, interview the world's most proficient animal training and behaviour geeks. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to this on so that you don't miss a single episode. Each episode of this show is brought to you on behalf of the ATA membership. And if you like the conversations in this episode, then you're invited to continue them with like-minded behaviour nerds within the membership area, which you can find out more about at www.animaltrainingacademy.com. Once part of the ATA tribe, you'll get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help problem solve your training challenges. Plus, we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forum areas. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behaviour geeks. But we will get started on today's episode, where we will be talking to one Jesús Rosales-Ruiz. Dr. Rosales-Ruiz is an associate professor in the Department of Behavior Analysis at the University of North Texas. He obtained his PhD from the University of Kansas in 1995 under the direction of Dr. Donald M. Baer. During his graduate training, he also worked closely with Dr. Ogden R. Lindsley. Jesus' areas of interests include antecedent control of behaviour, generalization, behavioural cusps, fluency-based teaching, treatment of autism, teaching of academic behaviour, animal training, rule-governed behaviour, and contingency-shaped behaviour. He has served on several editorial boards, including the Journal of Precision Teaching, the European Journal of Behaviour Analysis, and the International Journal of Psychology and Psychological Therapy. Dr. Rosales-Ruiz is a Fellow of the Eastern Psychological Association and a Trustee of the Cambridge Centre for Behavioural Studies. So without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Jesús onto the show today. He's patiently waiting by. Jesús, thank you so much for making time for us here at ATA and coming and hanging out today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I'm pretty excited about this podcast, so we should get going.
Me too, and I feel very confident speaking on behalf of the ATA audience in saying that they're pretty excited about this as well. They have been asking for you for quite a while, so this has been an episode that I've been really keen to make. So I'm, for everyone listening, I'm really excited that we get an opportunity to, if you have heard from Dr. Rosales-Ruiz before, to once again hear from him, or if you haven't heard from him before, then buckle in, because this is going to be a great episode. So let's dive straight into the first question today, Jesús. Could you please take everyone listening back to the start of your journey, 1995 or pre-1995? Where did you first learn about applied behavior analysis, and how did you get started doing what you do?
Well, I didn't know about behavior analysis per se. You know, when I was in high school, so I have to decide what to study, you know, what college to go, what degree to seek. And my mother wanted me to be an engineer, and my father wanted me to be a physician. And me, I was, when one is in high school, I was looking into what do I want to do, and also what are my skills. Although I had pretty good grades in high school, you know, I didn't want to spend my time like doing or learning something that I wasn't really interested. So at that time, you know, there was at the time that I had to make the decision, the psychology school was just open in my state, you know, at the University of San Luis Potosí. So it was the first year. So there was a lot of buzz around about psychology. So I thought about it, And, I decided that psychology would be good for me, but I wasn't imagining behavioral analysis. So I was imagining something more like psychoanalysis. I knew that I was interested in special education, but but I didn't really know what to expect. And for me, knowing nothing about psychology, I thought that this was going to be like starting all over again. Naively, I thought, well, psychology is like starting all over again. I'm not going to need math. I'm not going to need biology or chemistry or none of that. Yeah. Little did I know about it, So, and during that summer so I applied to psychology. I'm actually the second generation of the School of Psychology. However, during the 70s, behavioral analysis was very popular in Mexico. That was the thing to do. And since this psychology school was new, it was designed by behavioral analysts. So I remember very clearly going to my first class in college, and my first class was, the title of the class was General Psychology. But the textbook that we used was the textbook by B.F. Skinner, Science and Human Behavior. And I remember the first class right away because, in those times the professors were really confrontational. So the professor goes to the front of the classroom and writes the Greek symbol of psychology and asks the whole class, what does this mean? And so everybody giving some definitions. And then he say, well, this could mean the study of the soul. But let me tell you something. We have no soul. Say, what? And me, I was like, don't tell me that. See, I could not get over that. So at the beginning, I wasn't sure about this behavior analysis, and of course they were telling, we're going to take the scientific approach, just like any other natural science. Psychology can be a natural science, and it's called behavioral analysis. So, it took me a while to get over the first impression of the first shock that I have in my first class. And then I really got into it. And I remember we also have a rat lab. And so I was really, really interested on what we can do and the exercises that we do in the laboratory. However, the degree was 4 years, and really well-planned was just the first 2 years because it was all about theory, concepts, and the experimental analysis of behavior. So everybody knew what to do with the pigeons and the rats in the laboratory, but very few people had experience really applying behavioral analysis. So at the end of the 2 years, the whole degree was 4 years. You have 2 years of general education, and your third year, you either choose education or clinical. So I chose clinical because I was interested in children with special needs. So they hired 2 people from the University of Kansas to come and open a laboratory for us to start working with humans. One of them was Mexican, Fernando Sarmiento, and the other one was Bonnie Miller. And at that time, Bonnie Miller would speak very little Spanish. So when they came in, and they were going to open a laboratory to do these practicums. So when they came in, they were looking for students that were interested in working full-time in the laboratory. So the laboratory was consisted on, we will have In the clinical part, we will have children with special needs, with autism, mental retardation, and so forth. And in the educational part, the children that attended were children that were failing in the school, or plenty children that were older but they had never gone to school. So, but since they needed people that could read English and were willing to work full time, there were not very many people with my classmates. So finally, we get like 8 of us accepted, and they made a deal with the university for us to be able to work full time, that we will not go to class, but only show up for the examinations, and we will spend the whole time in the lab, which to me it sounded like a pretty good deal. So that's what I did, and in there, my first case I remember very clearly. It was this 14-year-old girl that looked like a vegetable. He would not move, she would do nothing, and all of that. And so they assigned me the task that I was going to teach her generalized imitation. And so I tried all kinds of things: food, water, discomfort at the sun, and nothing worked. But however, one day, one of the students was passing with a transistor radio. Probably nobody knows what is a transistor radio anymore. But anyway, he was playing the station of the university, which was classical music. And that was the first time that I saw Christy to turn his head towards the music. So then I thought, okay, this is a reinforcer here. So with a transistor radio, I taught her how to imitate and also object identification. That was a tremendous experience for me because I had never done anything like that. And seeing behavior change, just unfolding in front of my eyes when you have a reinforcer, that really had a great impact on me. However, a year after, or a year and a half after that, the persons who came to open that laboratory left for political reasons. So we stayed there. The students who originally were working there, because as I told you, very few people knew how to do applied behavior analysis with humans. So we stayed there, and I actually became the director of that center. Even though I wasn't graduated, I still was in my last semester of college, my college. So then I stayed, and then we did all our honors thesis there. We kept in contact with these professors, and we noticed something that we noticed that at the center we were really successful, but the children were not generalizing whatever they were learning to their homes. And so I became really interested in generalization. And so at that time, by that time, I'm talking 1979 or something like that. But in 77, the Donald Baer, who became my advisor, had written a really classical article. It still is the best, that with one of his students, Stokes, Trevor Stokes. And he, both of them, the title of the article was Implicit Technology of Generalization. So then I thought, I have to go with this guy and learn about generalization, And I was lucky because at that time, Mexico was rich because of the oil, and the National Council of Science and Technology were giving a lot of money to universities to send professors abroad for them to get specialized in things and then come back and teach teach in Mexico. So I got a scholarship to go and do my master's with Donald Baer at the University of Kansas. So I went there and stayed there for 3 years. And then I came back to Mexico to teach. But by that time, the political situation at the university has changed a lot, and behavior analysis wasn't that popular anymore. So basically, they didn't want me there. So they tried to find ways to get rid of me, but not very successful, until finally they gave me another scholarship to go back to the University of Kansas and do my PhD. And so then I stayed in the University of Kansas, and I understood that I could never go back to my original university in San Luis Potosí. So the University of Kansas then, at that time when I came back, I met, I had met before Ogden Lindsley. And Ogden Lindsley, he's one of the first students of B.F. Skinner. Actually, he's one of the first persons who apply behavioral analysis to humans. He was working mainly with schizophrenics and psychotics. But then he left that line of work and invented a movement that is called precision teaching, to do it in education. But with him, I have known about him because I have read in college about him, and he had a good reputation of being a good shaper, So I thought that I had to learn from him too. And, he's the one who first introduced me to the clicker. But they didn't used to call it clickers. They used to call it crickets. Crickets, they would call it Halloween crickets and toys that the children will use. So he taught me a lot about shaping. And so I was in graduate school there. And so at that time, I wasn't really interested in applied behavior analysis at the level of animal training, but it was more about basic science actually, and also in stimulus control of behavior. And so in 1992, then I had the fortune to meet Karen Pryor. Karen Pryor and Gary Wilkes and let me see, Gary Wilkes, yeah. They came to a conference, and the main conference of Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the Association of Behavior Analysis International, which they call it ABAI, in 92. And so I was with Ogden Lindsley, and Ogden Lindsley was pretty excited because he had used the clicker, of course, to train animals, to train rats, pigeons, his mule, and all kinds of critters. And so he knew about clicker training, so he was very excited that was happening in the field. And so it was a historical moment because it was the first time that behavior analysts were getting or meeting together animal trainers, Even though, animal training, of course, have started with the brilliance long time ago. So there was that part of the field, but it was sort of like forgotten. So Karen Pryor came and he sort of revived the interest on that. And not only the interest in animal training, but also the interest about the clicker training, which, by the way, at that time, you can see her talk. Actually, it's for free in our website, and the Art and Science of Animal Training. You can all go and check it out. Still, the name clicker training wasn't there in 1992. It was she was referring to the training operant conditioning. Anyway, so forwarding a little bit more, then I got hired in 95. I got hired by the University of North Texas. And I was going to teach, or one of the courses that I was going to teach was respondent and operant conditioning. And usually in my field, when you teach those, or it used to be like this, that when somebody asks you to teach those courses, there is a laboratory component. So I thought that I was going to have a rat lab or a pigeon lab. But, to my surprise, I have neither. So then I was worried about how am I going to do, what am I going to do to demonstrate the principles of behavior while I'm teaching this class. Then I remember one class that I took with Ogden Lindsley about behavior analysis, and he had us do a project with a small animal. So all the students have to use their pets and do something. So I thought to myself, I said, well, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to try to demonstrate the principles with their pets. So we went along, and to my surprise, it worked even better than the rat lab. Because, first, with the animals in the lab, there is no social component. But with your pet, there is, in addition to the training or the food or whatever it is, you have a social relation. And with my students, they haven't trained really their pets. It was the other way around. Their pets have them very well trained, And so I thought, wow, this is fascinating. And because then, in order for us to prepare their pets for the experiments that we have to do, we have to sort of like untrain their old ways and get it. So I thought that it was fascinating. And the students really got into it, really got into that. And they start asking and say, hey, this is very cool. How can I make a living out of this? Or is there a profession that I can go into animal training? And at that time, I didn't know anything. I said, I really don't know. But then later on, a year after, or maybe 2 years after, Bob Bailey and Marian Bailey were traveling across the USA to all the behavioral schools doing chicken camps. So they stopped by the University of North Texas and they started a chicken camp, or they did a chicken camp there. So I met them and then I told them what is it that I was doing. They were fascinated and they really liked the idea. And since the University of North Texas was like 5 hours driving from Arkansas, where they live, they volunteered to come every year that I taught that class to jumpstart their animal training projects of the students. So that was a real treat. And then, so the students got even more excited, and now we have better direction or what to do, set up the exercises better, and all of that, because Bob and Marian, of course, had been doing this for a long time. So they really helped me to set up a good curriculum. And so they start coming. They probably helped me like 3 or 4 years. Then they were very generous. We're really indebted to them. So then people start asking me, they still, how can we make a living out of this? How can we specialize in this? And then we say, how can we start can I do my thesis on this? And me, I was all puzzled. I said, well, a thesis on clicker training, I'm not sure that it's going to fly with the committee. I say, because at that time, the notion of clicker training was just teaching tricks, to animals. And so I didn't think that was going to be like so cool, you know. But then I thought, you know what? If we could find a socially relevant problem, and I told the student who approached me, to say, you know, if you can find me a problem that people will be very happy that you solve, then you can do your thesis on that. And then she said, easy. I said, what do you mean easy? Well, you know, we live in Texas. There is a lot of horses here. And one big problem is trailer loading. I say, can I do my thesis on teaching horses to trailer load, especially if they had problems? I say, sure. You know, that's a socially relevant problem. So applied behavior analysis is all about that. So I accepted the challenge, and it was actually very interesting because, you know, there is very few articles in the literature like demonstrating shaping or actually measuring, you know, because the behavior is happening. So it's hard to measure the moment to moment of that. So we try to figure out a way, okay, how can we demonstrate experimentally that whatever we're doing is actually what helped these horses to learn trailer loading. And so that's how we began the journey. Of course, we solved the problem. And, you know, that's actually one of the first articles that got published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. And it's called, we use targeting to teach the horse to do the problem only. So we were pretty happy. So by this time, people were really, really interested in this. So they wanted to do more about behavior analysis, animal training. And so one of the students got an internship at the San Diego Zoo, and people were doing little things in rescue, but nothing really nothing really organized. Then later on, Eddie Fernandez came to UNT, and of course he got really excited about it too. No, he was like, "Wow," you know. And all the students were there, and me, I have the problem and say, "Well, I told them, look, I know you're graduate students, but if you go to the Dallas Zoo or any institution and go and present yourself like I'm a student here and I come to help you and solve the problems of the world, we're not going to go nowhere, because actually, in those settings, probably there are people with more experience than we have. I mean, we have the knowledge how the principles work, but really, we don't have the experience. And also, if each one of you try to go and work in those institutions, just as a student, I'm not sure that it's going to fly that well. So I told them, why don't we set up an organization, so at least we have a letterhead or something that we're an organization that is not just a particular student that is interested in a particular project. So to have an organization, at least that makes us official. And then so Eddie and 5 other students got together, and that's how ORCA came about. So they applied so ORCA is a student organization dedicated to the scientific study of to promote the animal welfare. Okay, so now so that was very cool, So then we had more acceptance, and I think that the first job that we got is to help Doberman rescue. And basically the idea there was, okay, how can we teach them to good manners like heeling, sitting, basic commands, and all of that kind of thing, to make them more adoptable. And since we have learned from Downer's thesis with the trailer loading, how to measure. So we were more equipped to get baselines and to demonstrate our treatment. Okay, so then the year after, then Karen Pryor came to Dallas because the APTD was in Dallas. So she contacted me and said, Jesus, we're going to be there in Dallas. How about if I visit you and see what you're doing? I say, awesome. This was about 2002, So she came with two other people. One of them started tactics. I don't remember her name exactly, but she began using tactics with ice skating, and she was talking about that. So anyway, so she came. We took her to the places that we were working, and she was fascinated. And then that's when she told me that she told me about her plans of beginning Clicker Expo. And I really liked the plans that she had, that she wanted to sort of gather around the best trainers that she could get and form a conference in which we were going to be pushing the frontiers of clicker training. Our motto back then was rethink what is possible. Okay, and then she told me, but I need a scientist. And I say, how about, would you like to come to be part of this movement? And I say, of course. Okay. Which, that then I start meeting really awesome trainers like Ken Ramirez, Steve White, Alexandra Kurland, Kay Laurence, Virginia Broyman, Sherry Littman, you name it. And I was and all of us click really, really nice. Right away, it was really apparent the benefit of having us all there together, just telling people what everybody was doing. So it was a tremendous experience for me, because that's when I start really appreciating the potential of applied behavior analysis in animal training. And not only that, I had people who were doing excellent jobs on that, that were, in terms of application, they were like really good. I was really amazed by the kinds of things that they could shape and how they would shape it and all of that. So that helped me a lot to start then connecting my students with them. So now I will have a path, say, okay, I don't know how is this business, but guess what? I met these people and that's their business. So the people who were interested on that, I will send them with them and talk. And they were very generous with their, with their time. And because of that, then I start getting a lot of research ideas from them. They will do things and they ask me, why do you think this is happening? Or what is the principle that is at issue here? Or things. Or I will look at them and I say, or things that they were doing, and I will pause and say, okay, what is the behavioral analysis of this? So that enriched me in terms of problems, and also I had people who were really professional on doing this. So I start talking more to my students about those problems. So one of the first problems that we got was, this is the kind of discussions that we used to get. Should you treat every time you click? Yeah. Or is the clicker a bridge, And to me, that was the first time that I heard the word bridge. For me, it was a condition reinforced, or although I knew that some of the theories they say is the click bridges bridges the gap between the click and the food. Yeah. And to me, let's say, wait a minute, how does that work? Does the click stops the behavioral world and nothing happens, and then food comes and that has no effect on the animal's behavior, or what? So anyway, that was the first thing one of the first things that we started studying, and say, okay, how about if we do an experiment on that? And we did it with goats. And then I showed that the experiment was simple, I will click, then count to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I deliver the food. And what we start seeing is that we start building in those goats a lot of superstitious behavior, and a lot of species-specific behavior start coming out of them. Like they were mouthing my students, they were mouthing the target, rooting and pawing the floor and all of that. And I was like, wow. So the next year I came to Clicker Expo and I showed those experiments, and I said, you know what, I don't think that the clicker is a bridge. It doesn't really build the gap here, because, if the food reinforces, yes, the click reinforces this behavior, but if after the click you let some behavior creep in and you deliver the reinforcer, that also gets selected, and it becomes really messy. So then Virginia Broyman and Cherry Littman say, oh no, that will not happen with my experienced dogs. With clicker savvy dogs, they will 5 seconds is nothing, and they know the system and all of that. So I told them, I don't have dogs or clicker savvy dogs, but you do. And how about if we do an experiment? You do the experiment, I'll tell you what to do and all of that. And so they did the experiment, and to their surprise, the same thing happened. A bunch of superstitious behavior was. Sherry Littman, she told me, Jesus, after we do that experiment, I keep on walking and telling to myself, it's not a bridge. It's not a bridge. It's not a bridge. So they were pretty surprised. But it was very interesting. And, and we had come to understand, of course you can have delays, but you have to fill those delays with your own behavior. Basically, you have to build the routine, because if you let your animal fill those gaps with their behavior, then you select all of that. So you can have a ritual, in which you click and then go and walk and get the food and then bring the food and give it to the animal, and the animal is just waiting there and give the food, then nothing happens. But if you have this period of silence in which there is no communication, then what happens, it feels like extinction. So the animals start offering some other behavior, and then the food comes and you select all that behavior. So that was the kind of, I'd say, a cooperation that we were building with all with the trainers, which to me was totally enriched, because I will see the kinds of things that they will achieve, and I will ask myself, okay, what is the principle of? What are the principles behind this, or how does this work in behavioral analysis? Or they themselves will ask me, okay, so what is the explanation of this, or how behavioral analysis will talk about this, and so it was very, very enriching. But then, so what usually, so the beginning, Clicker Expo, I think that the first Clicker Expo, there were like maybe 50 or 60 persons there, and all the speakers. And then Clicker Expo started growing and growing and growing. So what that meant, there was less and less and less time for us to get to talk. Because but now we have to talk to the other people. The people go to this conference for you to interact with you. And so we started spending more time with the people, with men, that we were staying later and later and later at night. And they were really, really intense 3 days. So we say, no, this is not working out. And then, but we really, really want to preserve that collaboration, to have extended parts to continue throwing problems at each other, or explanations or puzzles or whatever, which we really enjoyed. So in one of those years, we were at lunch, and it so happened that most of us were at the same table. And we were talking about that, like, what are we going to do to continue this enrichment? So Laurence came out with the idea, why don't we make our own conference? But just to facilitate this discussion. We can have a conference for the public one day, and we charge them and we give the talks. But that is going to finance 2 extra days in which we're going to get together and present projects and where are we working and all of that. And then she said, and we can do it at the University of North Texas because the facilities there are going to be not that expensive. And Jesus has these students, so they can organize it. So that's how the Art and Science of Animal Training Conference came about. We will have this one day open to the public. And we all made the agreement to say, nobody charge anything. The only reinforces here is going to be good food, good hotels, and good talks. Yeah. And everybody was donated because all of us wanted to do. And so that grew so much, and it became very popular, and also, very enriching for us. But then it became a problem because my lab, ORCA, was becoming like a conference planning lab. And so that was cutting into the research, and I was concerned about that because, the students that will plan, for example, that planned the conference last year were not necessarily passing the instructions to the students that, that they were going to plan the conference for this year. So there was a lot of work, and we were reinventing the wheel all the time. So it was really time consuming. So then we were thinking about that, and the way that we solved it is that we decided to take it. And the other thing that was that people were saying, what, this conference is so good, but I'm traveling all the way from Canada for one day. It's not worth it, or coming from Wisconsin or out of state. It's really, it's quite expensive for one. Why don't you make it 2 days? So we had those 2 problems, so we decided to take it out of the university so we can use hotels close to the airport and to make it both days. ORCA was still gonna be involved, but now we were gonna create this non-profit, which is the Art and Science of Animal Training, which Mary Hunter is the president. Basically, she managed most of it just by herself, And so, but still the idea came out the same, The idea remained the same. Let's make it affordable 2 days. Let's just try to cover our cost and have good time. So we increased the conference to 2 days, and we reduced the private talks as we told them just to 1 day. But that has worked. very, very good. And, so now my students, they have more opportunities to talk to these famous animal trainers, more guidance in their professional development, which I cannot give them because, this is not my business. And a lot of research has come out of that, not exclusively, but more focused on the nature of training. We have done a lot of research. Let me use the ones that are published. After the trainer loading, then the next article that we published was a functional analysis with self-injurious behavior with monkeys. We were working in a small zoo, and there was this baboon who would bite his arm and pull his hair. And we were trying to figure out, okay, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? So what we did is a functional analysis. So in a functional analysis, basically we try to model several scenarios and see which ones of them produce the self-injurious behavior and which ones didn't. Now, we have a pretty good idea of that what maintained that behavior was the attention from the keeper. Because we noticed when we were working with her, we noticed, or when we were working by her, we noticed that every time that the keeper will walk by, this monkey will start engaging in self-injurious behavior. So we designed 4 conditions. One was the attention condition, in which every time that we will see the monkey engage in self-injurious behavior, we'll approach him and say, "Oh, no, sweetheart, don't do that. No, please stop, come, and all of that, And then we have other conditions that we will call it the demand condition, in which, like, go to the cage, come here, pull this train, and all of that series of commands that we would do. Then we will have another condition that will be the play condition, in which we will throw and try to engage it with enrichment items and all of that kind of thing. But it was then clear, like, only in the attention condition, the self-injurious behavior was really, really high. So what we did is, once that we knew that the attention, then we used the attention to shape a more appropriate behavior to get our attention, which was lip smacking. So now we shaped that up, and now the monkey, if they wanted attention, he didn't have to resort to self-injurious behavior. So that article was the second one published in JABA about animal training, and it opened the eyes in behavior analysis. All of them were amazed, partly because they could not believe that this self-injurious behavior was maintained by the attention of the keeper. It's like most persons will think maybe there is something physiological about it or something, And so from that also, we're really proud, because that was also the first time that the functional analysis was applied to behavior problems in animal training. So it has gotten, that article in itself has gotten a lot of attention. Now, another one, I'm trying to remember the published ones. Another one was by Eduardo Fernandez, in which we use and the group in which we use preference assessments. We cut on top tamarins, and there is the most recent one that we have published in is one about concept formation in dogs, like demonstrating that dogs learn natural concepts just the same way that the human does. And that was done by Erika Feuerbacher, which is now a professor, and she continues doing studies, especially in shelters, in animal shelters. We have done also, we have all kinds of topics, or research topics that I could be telling you for a long time. So, but maybe this is a good time for me if you have another question, or should I just continue talking, or how would you?
I'm just absolutely loving this, and I can imagine that the podcast audience is lapping all of this up as well. It's so beautiful to hear you talk and share your stories and tie them in with other podcast guests' stories, because they're all, if you look at the 100 and something episodes of the ATA podcast show, we could probably kind of piece together from lots of different guests, like how we got from those early days where Karen Pryor came to visit you to where we are now. So, hey, I'm keen for the passion talking to continue. And the passion talking does continue in part 2 of this special Animal Training Academy podcast episode. We've split this episode into 2 parts so that we could allow Dr. Rosales-Ruiz to unpack as much geekiness as possible into your eardrums. Creating part 1 has been so much fun. We are, of course, super grateful for Dr. Rosales-Ruiz's time so far, and stay tuned for part 2 coming out soon. We do, of course, really appreciate all of you tuning in today as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you were interested in carrying on the conversation about working with our animals in the most positive, funnest, choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. There's something there for absolutely everyone, and we're looking forward to having you join the tribe. That's it for this episode though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much everyone for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.